Well, greetings and salutations, imagination connoisseurs. First of all, let me apologize for wearing another striped shirt. Hopefully, this isn't moraying as much as the last striped shirt I wore. So I apologize for that. I just wanted to report, first of all, yes, I am safe from the 6.4 earthquake that was centered about 150 miles from here, deep into the Mojave Desert. I am a person that is quite fond of earthquakes. I've lived through many pretty big ones, like the Northridge quake that actually dropped freeways, like the 10 freeway in LA, which is basically a main vein that services the whole city, and it fell down. I think at Fairfax Avenue. I lived through that, and I'll tell you something that even to this day, and I don't remember his name, but there's something from the Northridge earthquake that I never forgot. It happened at about 4:30 in the morning, if memory serves. I was actually house sitting at Peter Billingsley's house. Don't shoot your eye out, kid, from A Christmas Story. And he recently appeared in, Spider-Man Far From Home. If you blink, you miss him. But I was staying at his house, and the Northridge quake, to give you sort of a context, literally felt like the apartment building he lived in Burton Way at the time, that somebody picked the building up and dropped it on the ground. That was the kind of earthquake that it was. I mean, it was two tectonic plates going whoosh, and it was violent, and it hurt. And every single dish in his kitchen fell out and shattered. It was a monster mountain of dishes. It was really bad. And there was a police officer. It was dark. There was a CHP motorcycle cop, and I want to say it was at if you know LA, the 118 freeway, as it merges into the 5 or someplace around there. I want to say it was the 118 into the 5. And what this cop didn't know, what the CHP officer did not know, is that part of the freeway, it was really high up. It was like 50 to 100 feet in the air. It was an interchange. He was riding on it. He'd probably ridden on it a million times. And part of the freeway had just given way, and it wasn't there. So here he was, it's 4:30 in the morning. It's dark. He's riding his motorcycle. He's been there 100 times, a million times, whatever. He literally suddenly there was no more road, and the poor officer fell 100 feet on his motorcycle to his death. And that was the Northridge earthquake. I believe it was 94. So today's earthquake was centered about 150 miles northeast of me, more east. And this was a very long earthquake. I want to say it lasted for a couple of minutes. And at first I thought Gilbert was gnawing on my chair or something, but this was a rolling earthquake. Like if you can imagine the ground rolling like a wave, that's kind of what the earthquake was like today. So anyway, no damage here. None of my hot toys fell over. The dogs didn't even bark. It was not a violent earthquake. It was sort of a soothing earthquake. It was kind of like being in a waterbed with a beautiful woman. But yeah. And so it was actually kind of nice. I like earthquakes. The first earthquake I ever felt was in '88 when I first moved to California, and it really sucked because I had that really giant cutaway of the Enterprise D, that technical drawing. It was huge. It was beautifully framed, and I loved it. And it fell off my wall in the earthquake, and the glass shattered. Now I get all my pictures framed with UV plexi, so it won't shatter. But it shattered, and when glass shatters with big pictures, frequently the glass just cuts. And it was mounted to foam core, which is always a mistake. Don't do that anymore when you're framing pictures. But so I lost my beautiful Enterprise D cutaway, which sucked because it was like in year 2 of the series. So anyway, everyone's safe here. No problems, but it was a sizable earthquake. 6.4 is nothing to sneeze at. Luckily, it was in the middle of the Mojave Desert. But anyway, that's an aside. Welcome, you imagination connoisseurs. Welcome to this, the 162nd episode of Robservations, the show about something. Glad to have you imagination connoisseurs here, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. And as all of you know, these chats are brought to you by Lucky Tiger men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. And if you go to their website at getluckytiger.com and you punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity when you check out, you get 20% off your order. And to that end, tomorrow I will be dropping the second episode of Living the Lucky Tiger Life. And I actually interview James Hills from mantripping.com, a new friend of mine, a guy that I did not know, and somebody who I've recently met. And James Hills, if you go to his website, mantripping.com, he travels basically around the world to different hotels, to different, and he's a guy's guy. And he blogs about traveling. And he was on the launching of a new Norwegian cruise ship. And he was actually, I interviewed him via Skype, so it's pretty noisy, but I interviewed him via Skype while he was on this cruise ship, and he told me about the new cruise ship. It has a go-kart track on it. It's got VR simulations. It's got anything you could want. And I've never been on a cruise, so I was kind of fascinated to do this. So you'll see that. And I actually got video, thanks to James, from the actual cruise line. They shot some HD video of this ship. So I cut that over the interview. So it's pretty interesting. And it's kind of cool. Like I think this Living the Lucky Tiger Life, you know, I repurposed my interview with Alan Murphy, which I thought was kind of cool because I know you guys wanted to see that. And I figured, why not do a show? Like, they are sponsoring me. They are sponsoring the channel. And I'm like, you know, it's fine. I'll take their monetary and their all their other kind of support. But I do feel an obligation. If someone's going to support me, you know, and like you guys are doing, I really need to step up and give you something for that support. So everybody who's supporting me over at the Burnettwork.net, we're stepping that up. I'm waiting for Neil to finish the Space Rob video game, the adventure game, which next month it'll be a year in development. The Space Rob game will be a year in development. I think it's going to be kind of fun. And you guys who are supporting the channel are going to get first crack at that video game. But anyway, again, that's just what I wanted to bring up before I start. And obviously, yesterday, Halle Bailey was announced as playing Ariel in Rob Marshall, the director. Rob Marshall, who most recently directed Mary Poppins Returns. Rob Marshall's live-action version of The Little Mermaid. Now, as many of you might have read, there was a very sort of racist troll farm that was active on Twitter once this announcement was made and was stirring up the pot, as it were. We have to be less susceptible to internet outrage, people. We really, really do. Because you really need to check, as John Campy always says on his show. By the way, I wasn't on his show. I've got family in town. I'm kind of wearing a French shirt today because I have a lot of French people here and we're going to a 4th of July celebration. But I wanted to, you know, Vive la France. If it wasn't for France, we would never have won the war for independence. So thank God for the French. And I'm dressing like a Frenchman. I don't have the thin body of a Frenchman, but okay. I don't look like Alain Delon, but I aspire to. So I'm going to an Independence Day celebration. But anyway, you know, I was reading, so this outrage, there was a lot of fires, the fires of outrage or racism or whatever were stoked because Halle Bailey, who looks to me, I mean, first of all, I feel uncomfortable saying this because I'm an old man with one foot in the grave, a very attractive girl that is also very talented, who looks to me to be, she's black or she's mixed race or whatever. She's certainly not the white bread, redhead Ariel that we've all come to know and love in The Little Mermaid. I took to Twitter last night and I said, of course, you know, everyone knows that mer people are, they're mostly congregated around the equator, the equatorial areas of the earth. And because of that, when they became more surface dwellers 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, when they keep more to the surface, they of course became darker skinned because they're in more hotter environments. So there's more melanin in their skin, obviously. And, you know, the white mermaids that we're so used to, they're actually, as far as the mer people population is concerned, obviously, as we all know, there are a lot less white mer people than there are mer people of darker shades. I mean, what do you think, or how do you think Ursula feels? Honestly, I mean, you know, mer people, if they reside at the bottom of the ocean, they've retained their blue tint. So it's really difficult when you're dealing with racists online that don't understand that most mer people are from the equatorial region. So casting Halle Bailey was actually more realistic than the way Ariel was drawn in The Little Mermaid. And of course, for anyone who understands the Hans Christian Andersen myth of the mermaid, it's not like they're all nice people. And by the way, let me recommend, because people are always telling me what I should recommend to you. Let me recommend the greatest Polish horror mermaid musical of all time. And yes, when I say this, I'm not being facetious. There is a Polish horror mermaid musical, and it is incredible. And all of you people should see it. It's called The Lure. And if you don't believe me, go to YouTube, not right now, but after I'm done talking, go to YouTube and look up The Lure red band trailer. It is actually the film debut of a beautiful new female voice, directorial voice, filmmaking voice on the horizon. She's actually her second film. I can't wait to see it. I haven't seen it yet, but go see The Lure. If you want to see what, in my mind, is the quintessential mermaid film ever made, please go see the Polish film The Lure, and you will love it. It has sex, it has violence, it has naked mermaids stripping, and it's Polish, and it's beautifully filmed, and it's a musical. If that doesn't catch you, if that doesn't make you say, Rob, I need to see that musical, I don't know what will. But please check that out. But to this end, I thought I would address this idea of people being up in arms about and whether it was faux outrage or not. Almost on cue, one of my, actually all of you are my favorite members of the Post-Geek Singularity, but a longtime imagination connoisseur and letter writer, Paul from Long Beach, wrote in to express his sentiments about the online outrage about Halle Bailey being cast as Ariel in Disney's live-action Little Mermaid. Take it away, Paul. Can you hear it, Rob? It's 5 a.m. on our Independence Day, and the noise is growing. It'll be a touch on the quiet side today. There are better fireworks to take one's concentration off of the outrage that is brewing on the fringe. By Friday, though, the mob will be out in full force, and I have a feeling that you are going to receive a few letters expressing utter outrage. Well, I'm going to join in, Robert. How dare they change a fairy tale character whom resides on a tropical coral reef and has a friend who sings calypso music. I'm personally affronted that the original black and white illustrated horror story isn't being faithfully adapted for the umpteenth time. And this, sir, is to be read in your old-time newscast voice. In breaking news, full-grown adults being triggered by the ethnicity of a cartoon mermaid. Wait until they find out what a real flounder looks like. Rest her soul, but can we get CGI Mabel King for Ursula? Paul. Paul, you always, I got to tell you, I've never met Paul in Long Beach, but he never ceases to elicit a major chuckle from me. First of all, Halle Bailey is actually a singer. She's a very talented singer, and they spent a long time. They looked far and wide to find her. And if I can say, at least from her pictures, she's incredibly photogenic. She certainly has the hair and the pipes to be Ariel. I think, to me, having lived in New Zealand and having lived in Australia, when I think of the sea, of the beach or whatever, I do think of blonde, bleach blonde, bottle blonde, California surfer girls and boys. But I also think of South Sea Islanders. I started going to Hawaii when I was a kid. My parents would take me there. And, you'd go out in catamarans and you go to luau's. And to me, the ocean was always about sort of darker skinned people. South Sea Islanders, to me, at least growing up, embody the ocean to me. So when I looked at who they'd cast as Ariel in The Little Mermaid, I thought, first of all, I'm like, of course. And, I can't admit freely that I found the girl they cast, Halle Bailey, is a very attractive young woman. And I love her face. I'm a face guy, and I love her face. She's got this beautiful angular face and big eyes. And I think to me, she kind of looked like a mermaid. So I'm all in. All these people that it's funny, like Paul pointed out, if anyone's ever read the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, And watching The Lure, you will notice it's mostly a bunch of pasty white people because it takes place in Poland. It was made in Poland, but it is awesome. And the two female mermaids in the movie, and there are two, and they're beautiful, but they're also murderous, and they transform in the film, and that's one of the joys of it. I just don't understand the faux outrage. I really don't. And I'm sure once the movie comes out that everybody will be like, oh, of course, she was wonderful, and they will always forget. I'm a big fan of redheads. I thought that both Mara in Aquaman and Ariel in Little Mermaid have fake red hair. It always bothered me. I like real redheads, but that's just me. I just don't understand why we get. I mean, I do. I understand. Everybody's angry about. You got to go back to the Clive Barker philosophy, which is, of course, as you know, if you read Clive Barker's Books of Blood, at the beginning of the Books of Blood, there's the quote where he says I think he wrote it himself. I think he came up with it himself. He said that everyone is a book of blood. Whenever we're opened, we're read. I've always loved that. I thought that was great. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But yeah, so there you go. Anyway, I have a number of letters that sort of apply to this same topic. And this first one comes from AJ Lancaster. Hi, Rob. I'm a white male, and I want to talk about diversity in film. Don't worry, this isn't an angry letter. I've been in internet comment sections since Halle Bailey was announced as Ariel in The Little Mermaid, and it's been a trying time to say the least. My favorite comment yet: Ariel can't, and no, they didn't use an apostrophe, be black. She lives under the sea, so she wouldn't have any melatonin. This led me to think about mermaid sleep schedules. Do they sleep like fish, or do they sleep like people? Sorry, got derailed there. So earlier this year, late last year, once Henry Cavill posted his weird social media hints that he's out as Superman, fan speculation began. My favorite, most wholesome favorite fan criticism happened when people said Michael B. Jordan. The overwhelming response: at 5'9" he was too short. Race rarely factored into it, and they had the perfect counter argument when it happened. He's an alien from outer space. There's nothing that can dictate his skin color. For all we know, Krypton could look more like Wakanda than Scandinavia, ethnically speaking, and this warmed my heart. The talk about casting more diverse roles in general warms my heart. I grew up in small-town Nebraska, where there was next to no racial diversity. People there aren't often outwardly racists when sober, but prejudices exist. I honestly had to overcome those prejudices when moving to a major metropolitan area, and thank God for movies like Remember the Titans and The Green Mile for teaching me lessons about race. Sorry, it's very hot, and I just got a shower. The talk about casting more diverse roles in general warms my heart. I grew up. Oh, wait, hang on. I already read that. Currently, Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite movie of this decade because I could identify so much with Miles Morales. My Uncle Bill died my junior year of high school, and he was so much like Uncle Aaron in Spider-Verse. He was cool. He cheered me on when I was learning to play the guitar, taught me to chill out a bit in social settings. He was a badass trucker and NHRA drag racer, but he hugged me close and held me there when I cried after my dad left. It's a long way to get to my final point, but it's this. Multicultural casting in film is beautiful for multiple reasons. The primary one being that more children get to see characters that look like them on a screen and identify with them. The second best part is that both more children and adults will see characters that don't look like them on screen, so they might be able to understand them. Giving love to all people, AJ. Well, AJ, a fine letter, sir. I really did enjoy that. And the third letter that speaks to this topic, actually not quite the third, there's probably even more, but another letter from a long time. I'm looking for it. I'm trying to find where this letter is. I know it was here, and now I can't seem to find it. Well, I will find it, but anyway, it's a good letter. It's from Mark C. And I want to read it And why can't I find it? Damn it. It's here. It's a letter from Mark C. I will find it, I promise. But anyway, it's nice to see. Actually, I'll read this one. This letter comes from Dean Mikatich, like Mick Jagger. Now, this is very funny because I said Mikatich. I'd mispronounced his name when I read his first letter. He wrote me back and he put M-I-C, and being a film maker, when I see M-I-C spelled out, I think Mike. That's what I think, Mike. And he tried to phonetically spell his name, but here he writes in. So it's Dean Mikatich, not Mikatich. So Dean Mikatich is here, and he says, "Hi, Rob. First, I'd like to say you almost got my surname right, but it's my fault. It's pronounced as Mick. Don't worry about it. As I said, that it's my fault for not writing it out properly. I'm also dyslexic, so writing is not a strong point for me. Even writing in words and checking for mistakes, I always miss something, and the grammar is a mess. Laugh out loud. Also, I'd like to thank you for reading out my 2 letters and your response to them. While my wife has no interests in our fandom, she was pleased for me. Forensic crime shows and political dramas are more her cup of tea. Hey, man, just so you know, The West Wing is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I love forensic crime shows, and I love political dramas. So tell your wife we still park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. She might not get the reference, but perhaps we park our same limos in the White House parking garage. Anyway, yesterday, you were talking about Bond 25 and meeting up in London for the premiere. As I've lived in London all of my adult life, I have never attended one. And being a Bond fan, I would like to join you and the other members of the Post-Geek Singularity. I can also be your unofficial guide to film location sites in London, such as Fast and Furious 6, National Treasure, a number of Bond films, Harry Potter, Doctor Strange, Edge of Tomorrow, and many more. Most of them are all within walking distance of Trafalgar Square, which means they're walking distance within the St. Martin's Lane Hotel. I can even take you to the little pub on the river at the end of Mission Impossible, though I've never been inside. I've passed by it many times and keep meaning to go in. All you had to say was pub, son. Out of curiosity, you have said that Connery is your favorite Bond and From Russia with Love is one of your favorite films. But what about your favorite Bond theme song? Mine is a-ha's The Living Daylights. But that might be because I moved to Gibraltar shortly after they filmed the intro. I understand. Schmiert Spionen, Death to Spies. I also enjoyed Adele's Skyfall being the theme song back to the big band and powerful vocals of Goldfinger with Shirley Bassey. I think the weakest one is Madonna with Die Another Day. I never thought it was a good fit for Bond, but then it fitted the film, and that it was a hot mess. Regards, Dean, and that's Mikatich. Well, Dean, first of all, let me be clear. It's not the premiere of Bond 25 that I want to go to. It is the first public general audience showing of the movie. And the reason I want to go is because James Bond is a homegrown boy, as you know. He's from London. He's part of MI6. The British, our version is the CIA. MI5 is domestic. MI6 is external. So James Bond is a member of MI6 with a license to kill. And the reason I wanted to go to London the first time is I wanted to sit with fanatical Bond fans. It's like why I go see Marvel movies at the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood the Thursday they open, because you want to get in there with the real fans, the people that have bought tickets. I don't like going to press screenings is fine. And you get a lot of big geek audiences here, but press screenings are never as vocal as being there with real fans. And as a lifelong James Bond fan, by the way, Gilbert is here with Tallulah. I've already given them cookies, you guys. You know you already had cookies. Don't try and butter me up. They always try and butter me up. But I want to go see it with real British, real Brit, stiff upper lip Brits. Keep calm and watch Bond. That's what I want to do. And we're all going to go. I'm going to coordinate it. Let's take over the entire theater. And if you want to be a part, Dean Mikatich, you, sir, can be a part of it. But you got to bring your wife. I mean, if she likes forensic dramas and political thrillers, she's got to like Bond. Who doesn't like Bond? So we're going to make it an event, and I'm looking forward to that. So we got to do that, which would in fact be tremendous. And I firmly I want you there, man. Let's do it. I found Mark C's letter. Mark C, as you know, Mark C is a longtime supporter and member of the Post-Geek Singularity. He describes himself many times as both a toxic fan and a member of the fandom menace. and I appreciate his honesty, but I've also appreciated his ability to state his opinions very clearly, and he's been nothing if not polite. And I welcome him, as I welcome everybody who has different points of view to this, the Post-Geek Singularity. And you guys have too, which is why he keeps coming back. And I like when he sends me letters because they're usually pretty interesting. This one is pretty good. And it goes back once again. It's my third letter that addresses the issue of, can Ariel be played by a woman of color? I mean, my answer is yes. If she's talented and great actress, why not? But so Mark Chure says, they say everyone has a story to tell. Here's a bit of mine. I have lived most of my life 10 minutes outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. In 1983, at the local high school, a white and black student got into an altercation. A week later, our Catholic church put on their annual spring fair. While attending, the black student happened to run into the white one on the grounds and promptly put a 6-inch knife into his back. Now, it needs to be known, most people of color in our town lived on 1 or 2 streets going back to the segregation days. After the stabbing, 6 friends of the white student piled into a pickup truck with shotguns, drove down these 1 or 2 streets, and proceeded to shoot at anything that moved. A 7-year-old child terribly had his kneecap blown off. Fast forward 7 years to 1990. I'm starting my senior year in high school, and we had our first openly biracial couple in the school. While I'm sure they dealt with plenty of prejudice, for the most part, I felt like they were left alone. Fast forward another 7 years to 1997, and my sister, attending high school, really doesn't think a whole lot about biracial couples, and for the first time, being openly gay isn't going to get you condemned. Fast forward again to today, and hardly anyone worries about seeing an openly gay couple. Remember, I live in the deep South. So where I'm going with this, and how does it pertain to geekdom? Well, we are currently going through a time when certain groups are trying to push the needle of progressiveness by any way possible. After all, being progressive is a good thing, right? But why push? Why push? Is lack of equality that terrible now? I'm sure it's worse than I know, but it's the best it has ever been in this country. Yes, sir. So why push so hard? We live in an age where everyone wants to feel good about the world and themselves. Is this push good for progress or just to make the advocate feel better about themselves? I think in a world where everyone is looking for that dopamine hit, most radical progressives are using a cause to feel good about themselves. Again, how does this fit into pop culture? Feeding the progressive beast seems to be the flavor of the day for the last 4 years. Characters are created to serve that purpose, which would be fine, except for one problem. They aren't true characters. Understand, this has been the beef of my argument all along. If the most interesting thing about a character is their gender, race, or sexual orientation, then it is not a true character, just a stereotype. I think characters like the new Doctor, Michael Burnham, Captain Marvel, and Rey either fall directly into this abyss or are balancing on the edge. They exist simply for representation, to make Hollywood and the audience feel good about the fact they exist. I realize it's more difficult, but I believe if we got more thinking and less feeling, female characters would be more accepted and toxic fans like myself would be quiet. Also, if you agree with the oosh, if you agree with the push, remember one thing. At times, society has needed a push to start progress. Society doesn't like to be pushed to make progress faster when it's already happening. Sadly, it usually leads to regression. Look, Mark C., I think that's a great letter that you wrote me. And I agree. One of my oldest friends in the world that I've known since I was 2 years old, when he is gay, and he married his partner while there was a small window of legality of same-sex marriage in California that was later revoked, and now it's back in place. But even he told me, and other people, I've had lots of gay friends since I was 13, really. Never, again, I never thought of them. I say that now as my gay friend. But at the time, they were just my friends who came out to me as gay. And I was always of the opinion, so, like, their gayness didn't affect our friendship. unless they wanted to tell me about their sex lives, which admittedly I was kind of interested in because I find human sexuality to be fascinating. But I mean, I've never ever quantified my friends based on their gender, their color, their religious beliefs. I've never thought about that. I don't say, oh, my gay friend so and so, or my black friend so and so. I just don't think that way. And maybe that was a result of growing up with a steady diet of Star Trek. But I'm also a fan of space. And I had a poster, that very famous image of the wall. It was on my wall of the Earth rising. It was from the moon, but the Earth rising. I had a poster like that, and I've always tended to look at the Earth as a globe, as it's the planet Earth full of all of us. I mean, it just depends where you're standing on the planet Earth. Like when I've told the story when I went to South Korea back in early 2018. It was the first time I really understood, oh, how does it feel to be different everywhere I went? I was looked at, not necessarily strangely, but I was looked at because I was white, and people wondered, was I in the military? Was I visiting? What was my deal? And it really depends on where you're standing on planet Earth. So ultimately, I really have no use for racism of any kind. I mean, I understand that in the United States, the black population is skirting around 14 and 15%. The Asian population is, what, 5%? But if you go to Africa, or you go to, in my case, I went to South Korea, those numbers change. So I tend to try and look at the planet Earth from space. My entire worldview, my entire universal view is based on looking at the Earth from space. And if you choose to do that, suddenly it's like, oh, if you're in a fixed position in space and you watch the Earth spin around, you'll be able to get a glimpse of every single country. And if you realize in your mind, wow, there's people of all different shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds on this globe, it's pretty stupid to hate one person for the way they look, or the way they feel, or the way their gender, or what have you. It's silly to me. And I think, look, here's what I think about movie making. I wish people would understand this. The reason Halle Bailey was cast as Ariel the Mermaid was not because they thought to themselves, okay, we're going to just cast a person of color because we have an agenda. No. Rob Marshall is a very smart guy. He's a great director. He's a choreographer. He's worked in the arts for a long time. I believe he himself is gay. You know, he's not, when he's casting the person, there's too much at stake. What Rob Marshall and what Disney is trying to do is, who is the best person that we can find to play Ariel? Who is A-list? She might not be A-list now, but who is the best person we can find? Disney's not going, well, it's time to put a person of color in this role. No, you know what's happened now? What's happened is the doors have opened where people of color were not immediately dismissed like they used to be. I think 20 years ago, nobody would have cast a person of color as Ariel. I just don't think they would have. But now it has been shown with the success of movies like Black Panther that we are living in a world that is evolving. And like Mark C. says, that evolution is natural. It was a function of reality. And I think pushing a progressive agenda, serving this stuff down people's throats, I don't like it. I considered myself a progressive lefty. I don't like the left very much anymore. I hate what they're doing. I think they're quashing free speech. I think they're pro-censorship. And I think the far left is dangerous. Far right you can see coming a mile away, but the far left cloak themselves in righteousness, and I think that's wrong. I think what Mark said in his letter is absolutely right. Just like my friend Jeff now never thought that marriage equality would come the way it came. Now we have marriage equality. The fact is we are traveling more. Social media has done two things. It has, on one hand, expected everybody to get exactly what they want. They can tailor their input to be exactly what they want to hear. But on the other hand, people are becoming much more aware of the rest of the world, and they're seeing all kinds of people, which is a good thing. So the natural evolution of people being able to, I think we're having a little bit of an aftershock right here. But I think the great thing of the world today is that we're far more aware of all of these different kinds of people than we ever were. And a natural evolution of that is more acceptance and more tolerance. But what's great is I don't think that Disney had an agenda. We must cast a black actress to play Ariel. They weren't thinking that. They were casting a wide net. They thought, we have to cast the best person that we can find to play Ariel. And what's happened is, over the last 25 years, there's been a lot more tolerance, a lot more doors have been opened. And the fact that Disney, who's trying to appeal to the widest possible margin of people around the world, that they would cast a black actress, a person of color, as Ariel, is exactly the kind of evolution that we need, because she was cast for her ability, not because of an agenda. And don't take away the fact that her talents are what sold her on Rob Marshall was sold on her, and Disney, the studio, was sold on her because of her talent and ability. And I am a huge proponent of that. I don't care what color anyone is. I'm all about ability and talent. Just like we were talking about Willow Yang, her letter yesterday? Was it yesterday? I don't believe, because I was popping off. I don't believe that in the sciences, we have to have some kind of quota system. We need the best people for the jobs everywhere. That's it, period. And whether you're going to be let into an Ivy League school, if it's 100% Asian, because those are the only people that qualify to be in Harvard, so be it. Let the best people. We live in a complex world, and we have a lot of problems that we need solving. And I'm tired of quotas and agenda-based decision-making. Give the best people the jobs. Give the most qualified. Give the most talented. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what their sexuality is. I don't care. I want the best people in the positions to make the best choices, make the most difference. That's the way the world should work. And you know what that means? That means for all of us, we have to work harder, man. We have to be better, and we have to be stronger. We have to know more. It's up to us. We should all be great. And let's all let the cream rise to the top. That's what I say. I don't care what color you are. Just be good. Be better. Be the best. Just like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, damn it. And Scotty and Uhura and Chekhov and Sulu. They were the best. That's why they were on the Enterprise bridge crew. Well, Scotty was in engineering and McCoy was he was the doctor. But they could all come on the bridge when they wanted. So, Anyway, Mark, I liked your letter. I think you are correct, sir. And I agree with you. Well, let's see what's Star Killer is here. Star Killer says it sucks getting backlash because she's black. I think first of all, she's adorable. First of all, she's adorable. It doesn't matter what color she is. You look at pictures of her. I was not familiar with her. I've never seen her sing. I've not gone and looked up a YouTube video. I just looked at pictures of her and I'm like, I would watch her for 2 hours. I won't admit that I think she's as cute as she is. I'll just say I'm hoping she's very talented. She's beautiful. Why wouldn't you want her to play Ariel? I'm in. Bring it on. Willow Yang is here. Willow Yang says, I'll be honest, I initially thought it was Halle Berry who was cast as Ariel. Now that would have been interesting. Well, Willow, I too thought that. I read that and I was like, Halle Berry was cast as Ariel? I thought, see, what was I? I was ageist. My initial thing was, I'm like, oh my God, she's too old. She can't play the role. And then I actually stopped myself and I'm like, well, that's unfair. Maybe Rob Marshall saw something. And then I realized I was wrong. I realized it was Halle Bailey, and she's part of a singing group. Willow also says, happy 4th of July to you and all the American viewers. Who are some of your favorite movie or TV presidents, real or fictional? Well, Jed Bartlett, Martin Sheen from The West Wing is my favorite fictional president. There's been a lot of fictional presidents. As a kid, there was a TV movie called The Missiles of October about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and William Devane was cast as Kennedy. When I saw that William Devane was the president of the United States in The Dark Knight Rises, I was like, oh my God, Christopher Nolan clearly saw The Missiles of October growing up, and I was stoked. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. I thought it was the coolest thing that William Devane was the president of the United States in The Dark Knight Rises. I think that's amazing. I like Donald Moffat as the douche president in Clear and Present Danger. At the end, when he's trying to negotiate with Jack Ryan, Harrison Ford, you have a chip in the big game now, Jack. That's the Potomac two-step. Dennis Haysbert in 24, I thought was a kick-ass president. Or no, was it Dennis Haysbert? Is that who it is? I like that president. I liked, of course, Bill Pullman in Independence Day. But I love movies that have presidents of the United States in them, fictional presidents. I've always enjoyed them, and there's so many to choose from. I mean, I like Morgan Freeman. Now as the president in the upcoming Angel Has Fallen, because who doesn't love Morgan Freeman? It's great. I like Kiefer Sutherland as the president of the United States in Designated Survivor. I didn't watch season 1, was so disappointing, the latter half, but I did watch season 3 on Netflix, and I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. This next letter, the person who wrote it told me not to read their name. I'm just going to call them Z. Z. Greetings, Rob. Please feel free to read this on Robservations if you so desire, but don't use my name. Thank you kindly. This is a good letter, too. I really like this letter. I grew up as a Toy Story fan, and I have loved every single entry to the franchise. To me, these movies are deep, thought-provoking, and mature in their topics. But that discussion is for another email. I thought Pixar hit it out of the park with the 4th installment, which was just marvelous and made me ugly cry several times. I particularly love what they did with Bo Peep and her relationship with Woody. I love my strong female characters. By the way, that was wine. It is the 4th of July. I love my strong female characters, and I just got a kick out of them, and I thought they did justice with her. However, yesterday, I read the news that Disney has cut off a scene from Toy Story 2's post-credit bloopers. The scene in question is a fake blooper where Skinny Pete, as an older actor, is flirting with 2 models and tells them he can get them to be in Toy Story 3. The scene is for 30 seconds, and my interpretation is that he, as an actor on set, is trying to flirt with a girl using the power that he probably doesn't have. I recently rewatched the movie, and I don't think there's more to it, but I respect all opinions and can understand how others may have different interpretations. So, why have they cut it? Well, apparently, this is in response to the wake of the Me Too movement. Rob, I grew up in a third world country, a place where we actually had and still have an ethics ministry, which their basic job is to censor movies for reasons they deem necessary, whether that is religious or political based. I have always despised the idea of this ministry because they are a reincarnation of the thought police. While their base missions are to censor movies based on religious or political reasons, in reality, they use their powers on whatever reason they come up with these days. One of the reasons I love Hollywood movies is because of the freedom of expression and getting to know or see things from various artists, which I may or may not like. I've seen so many things that I disagree with in some movies, but I don't think my disagreement with a joke or a scene should be the basis of censorship. This move by Disney troubles me because A, it's setting a precedent of censorship of old movies, which I do not support. And B, it reminds me of the ethics ministry in my own country. Starting censorship on a few reasons, but then it expands to many others. Interestingly enough, I saw Tom Hanks on Jimmy Kimmel, an awesome and funny interview. I must say, I saw this too. He was there promoting Toy Story 4, reading press notes given to him by Disney, saying, you must say Bo Peep has always been a strong character, but now she's stronger in a different way. Watching that, in addition to the scene removal, signals to me that Disney is trying to change history. I love Bo Peep in Toy Story 4, but she was never a strong character because she was barely in the previous movies. I believe even if something is in an old movie, it is not acceptable by today's society. It shouldn't be a basis of censorship. If some joke was greenlit in that day and age and is not acceptable now, it's an indication of how we've changed and hopefully improved our behaviors. We can acknowledge that and do better in the future. However, I just don't like censorship, and I don't think anything good comes out from erasing our history, even if it is 30 seconds of a cartoon. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks, and live long and prosper, Z. Well, Z, I think it's wrong. I mean, here's the thing. Human beings, not just white cis males, but human beings in general, we don't have a very proud history of treating each other very nicely over the last 10,000 years. It has been a charnel house. This place has been a litany. And yes, did men have the overt power? Of course. But you know what? I mean, we all are guilty, all of us. And I completely agree with you. I think that it's better to show where we've come from and how we've evolved. I think it's important to pretend. We want to pretend that we're not uh creatures, animals that want to wallow around in the mud sometimes. We are. Look at how many people go to Pornhub every day. I mean, we are creatures of passion, creatures of instinct, and we're not always, most of the time, obviously, we're not usually thinking in our best interests. Do we want a culture that's more highly evolved? Do we want everybody to be treated fairly? Yes, all of those things are true. Everybody, no matter who you are, every shape, size, color, creed, sexuality, gender, religious belief, we should all at least have the ability to state our case, to get out there, and eventually bad behavior or behavior. Look, we have a choice. We're either going to evolve and we're going to learn to be the custodians of the planet, because for a very short period of time, pretty much the last 100 years and probably moving into the next 100 years is going to be crucial in the survival of our species. And we'll have to make that choice. Are we going to survive as a species, or are we going to destroy the planet, destroy ourselves? It's going to happen within the next 100 years. So it's something we should probably talk about and deal with right now. The fact is, if you get rid of jokes like that, I don't want to live in a world where I see a beautiful woman and don't react. You know, I want to be able to see a beautiful woman who's beautifully dressed, who smells great and has a great haircut. I always want to be able to see her. Now, I don't know what kind of a person she is. I have no idea. I've never talked to her. I don't know. But if I see a beautiful woman walk across the room, I have the male gaze. I would like to be able to stop and admire that without being pilloried for it. Because you know what? If a woman spent that much time to find that great of a dress, to get that great of a haircut, to put on her makeup and make herself look that great, to have the greatest shoes in the world, whether they're Manolo Blahniks or whatever, if she's taken the time, she's done it on purpose because she wants me to notice. And I don't ever want to not notice that kind of beauty. Why not? And it seems to me that we want, now that doesn't mean I'm going to go run across the room and be a douchebag and try and take something from her she doesn't want to give me. No, I'm going to sit back and admire her from afar. I don't want that to go away either. You know, I don't want human relationships to break down. I want to love women. You know, I don't want that to be taken away. And I think that if we can't laugh at ourselves, what is humor but a way to illuminate our shortcomings and foibles, and to make light of the fact that there's no better way to convince somebody who's racist they're racist through a joke, or to make them realize that, oh, I probably should engage in this kind of behavior. I think that's one of the great things about movies and entertainment. Like I've said before, what is the greatness of movies? What do movies have? Not just the power, but one of taking a person away. But the great thing about movies, the great power that movies have, that cinema has, is that we can put people of all different walks of life, all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, beliefs, genders, whatever. They all come together, and they don't care who they're sitting next to. You know, there are no Jim Crow laws in movie theaters anymore. Thank God. Everybody sits down in a movie theater. Everybody. And when the light goes down, the only thing that matters is what's on the screen. You're not thinking about your neighbors or getting into their business or who's that guy or who's that girl or why are they treating their kids this way. No, when the lights come down, everybody in that room gets to share in a singular experience. And everybody can walk out of that theater and talk about it with one another, because they've all had this shared experience. There's power there. That's one of the great things. Look, I watched the first 5 minutes of Stranger Things season 3, and Elizabeth got pissed because we have to, do family stuff. But it was like surprising. I'm not going to spoil it, but I love the way Stranger Things opened. The cold open of the first episode of Stranger Things 3 had me intrigued. They did a great job. It was a great misdirect. I loved it. Set it all up. Set up the 80s milieu. It was great. But, we live on a planet. We all have to start learning to live with one another, because we're not going anywhere. And if we are going anywhere, it's by our own hand. And that's stupid. Who wants that? I don't. I want to stick around. You know, I want to meet people. I want to see great things and meet interesting people and eat interesting food and go to places I've never been and meet people I've never met, hear their stories. And I don't think we should deny who we are and where we came from. It's the only way we can learn. Mark C says, come on, Rob. We both know Hollywood is prejudiced against ginger people. Laugh out loud. I don't know. They're my favorites. Come on. Nicole Kidman. No, I'm Jessica Chastain. Yes, probably, but no, I think redheads aren't prejudiced. There have been a lot of great redheads in movies. Hollywood is prejudiced against redheaded men, not against redheaded women. Anyway, Emmanuel Ericart says President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew H. Camacho. I'm missing that reference. I am missing that reference. I know I should probably know that, but what a great name. Mark C. also says, the question is source material. Adapt Anderson's story and you are fine. Adapt the Disney animated film. Now you are causing a problem. What is your source material? Be faithful to that source. Well, okay. You know, obviously the Hans Christian Andersen tale is a little different. Mermaids are not exactly the nicest people in the world. But you know, Disney, it's their adaptation. Then you can, I don't think going back and making a direct adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's tale would be the best use of time. See, I know that's one thing I don't necessarily believe. The problem is, here's my problem. When you are going to change the race or gender of a character, to me, there needs to be a reason to do it, because the question in the mind of the audience arises like, okay, if Idris Elba was James Bond, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem. I don't mind that. I think he's too old because they want to lock him in for 4 or 5 movies. And by that time, he'll be over 60. So that's probably problematic. But my whole thing is that if you're going to do that, if you're going to go out and gender swap or make a race swap of a character, then that becomes first and foremost. And I want to know, why did you do that? Like, what about the character? Because you can't go in and watch 25 James Bond movies, and then for the 26th James Bond movie, if they've cast a person of color to be Bond, that's a question in my mind. Now, you've got to address it. If you're going to address it by not addressing it, you have to not address it in a clever way. There's got to be a reason, because you can't, there's baggage now that is from that choice. I think one of the things about, say, the new Ghostbusters that was a mistake was they didn't allow necessarily the femininity of the characters to become a part of the story, and it should be. And it was, I thought, hackneyed. But I think it's interesting. Like, I thought, for instance, Ocean's 8 made good use of the femininity of the characters. And I think that's always something. La Femme Nikita did a good job, where you see an assassin as a woman gets trained. I thought that works really, really well. So as long as the story, in the case of Ariel, going from somebody who's white to somebody who's black, I don't think that's going to matter. Just because of the kind of story it is, it's going to establish. I mean, are they going to paint Melissa McCarthy blue if she's going to play Ursula the Sea Witch, or gray, or she's not blue, gray, or whatever color she is? Like, how are they going to do that? I mean, it really depends. It depends how you address it. And if you're going to make that swap, you're drawing attention to it. You've got to justify why you've done it. That's the way I've always, and justify it within the context of the story itself, not like, don't make it like we're just swapping the color or the gender of this character and ha ha ha. See, no, if you're going to do that as a storyteller, use that to your advantage, and incorporate that in as part of the story. At least that's the way I've always sort of thought about it. I think that's the best way to address those things. Stubble McShave says that extreme PC culture leads to a Demolition Man world. Look, I agree. We're not PC. Human beings are not PC people. I don't understand this idea of, why do we always have to be polite? You know, it's funny. I made a tweet yesterday about who's playing mermaids and why don't they cast a real mermaid to play Ariel? And I was being, flippant and facetious. And I actually was using the movie I Am Sam. I went and I made a quip about my first tweet. The first way I had written it before I edited the tweet was I said, they didn't get a retard to be an I Am Sam. And I used the word retard because young Dakota Fanning says retarded even in the trailer. And then I realized I can't say that. Somebody's going to take me to task for using the word retarded in a tweet. So I said developmentally disabled. I actually stopped and censored myself, even though I went back and watched the trailer of the film and they use that word in the film. Now, I think that, yes, are we supposed to be more sensitive to people and understand their plight? Of course we are. I get that. But at the end of the day, we know what you can also infer meaning through the way people are, the way they're speaking. If they make a slip of the tongue or something, like I don't think if I'm talking to somebody from my father's generation and they use the word Oriental, I don't suddenly go, oh my God, you can't use the word. Or I understand that now we use the word Asian in this country. But back in the day, Oriental was the term and those things change, but you can't pillory somebody for that, even though I think people would now. We need nuance and we need understanding and we need common sense. PC culture is stupid, ultimately, because why do you want to be PC? We all need to be able to poke fun at one another. All of us, everyone. I saw an Asian comic on Jimmy Kimmel. No, on Jimmy Fallon. I think it was Jimmy Fallon, and I forget his name. He was hilarious, and he was talking about the way to solve America's problem is to hire an Asian president. I don't know his name. I loved his delivery. It was hilarious. I thought he was hilarious, and he made some really, really good points. Really funny. He made some really great comments about race that I was like, all right. I loved it because he was being a little he was not being PC. And I thought he was funny, but he was getting away with it because he was Asian. And I thought his delivery and his pitter patter I really was impressed. And now I can't remember his name. But if you look it up, he was an Asian comic on Jimmy Fallon. And I thought it was really good. Anyway, JB Bonifacio is here. He says, binging Stranger Things season 3 today. No regrets. You should have no regrets. Don't regret experiences or things in life, because why should you? Oh, Comancho, Terry Crews is the president on Idiocracy. Of course he was. Thank you, Emmanuel Amicart. Of course he was. He was the president in Idiocracy. I forgot about that. You know what? To be honest, I've only seen Idiocracy once. I've only seen it once, so I forgot that. But of course, all these people are like, Rob, how do you not know Idiocracy? I only saw it once. I don't own it, so I haven't watched it multiple times. So I apologize for not knowing that. But I love Terry Crews. Love Terry Crews. I like the president of the galaxy in The Fifth Element as well. Speaking of former sports people or wrestlers that become presidents of the galaxy. Tiny Lister. I love that. So anyway, another great president. But I will never forget that he was the president in Idiocracy. And that was bad. That was bad on my part. I have to revoke my card. Here comes one from, oh my God. Okay. This is a total change of pace, but this is my last letter of the day that I'm going to read. This letter, it's this total change of pace. It's a funny story about working on a crew on a shoot. And I have to read this to you because I literally laughed out loud when I read this morning. And I'm just going to read it to you. It comes from Jordy I. Jordy I says, Jordy I has written me some things before that I haven't read yet, but I'm going to get to them. Jordy I says, I secretly have the utmost respect for the sound department, but generally I try to keep that one under wraps. Anyway, having said that, here's a true story about production I hope you enjoy. As you might expect, it involves poking fun at a sound man, so I guess it's got to be good. So we were filming a motocross event. For those of you who aren't familiar with the wonderful world of motorsport, let me explain. Imagine lots of souped-up rally cars covered in mud with go faster stripes and large bore exhaust pipes. Then imagine those crazy looking cars roaring across rough countryside, terrorizing the local wildlife, driven by cheerless men and women in damaged crash helmets and grubby, ill fitting coveralls or overalls. Now, imagine the hordes of spectators who relentlessly support this event. Tank top clad, thermos flask carrying enthusiasts hanging out on the sidelines for hours on end, struggling against the certain onset of hypothermia in an effort to get a glimpse of the action. The next Subaru, or as they say, Subaru, or some other equally speedy automobile roar past. In reality, they rarely see anything because as the car rockets past on full throttle, they more often than not get vigorously peppered with sharp grit, thrown up from the track, or drenched in ominous looking, filthy, stagnating ditch water containing every virus known to man. Years ago, it was my unfortunate task to be part of a multi camera shoot to film such a rally across Wales in the UK. I think we had about 10 three-man crews positioned at various strategic points along the rally track, which sprawled over an area of about 50 miles square of rough countryside. It was going to be a night shoot. The call time on location was 10:30 p.m., so we left our hotel at about 7 p.m. for a meal before traveling to the Welsh outback for setup. We were staying in a small village with a solitary high street, so it didn't take long to find the only place to eat, a rather dubious-looking Indian restaurant. Anyway, we all quickly decided on a meal which would be least likely to result in contracting botulism or some similar parasitic poisoning. Choosing something safe was a bit like playing Russian roulette, only replacing the revolver with the menu. The assistant cameraman and I opted for something as harmless as possible, a vegetarian dish. Good. The sound man had not had the pleasure of such exotic foods before. I rather cruelly suggested essentially the most fiery hot thing on the menu, a good old vindaloo. When the food arrived, we dutifully scoffed away with one eye on the poor sound man who, in an attempt to not lose face, consumed his curry like a true English gentleman. Sweating buckets with his mouth on fire, he was clearly going through a similar physical and emotional experience of having both his wisdom teeth pulled without anesthetic. When the waiter cleared away our empty plates and inquired in a rather strange Indie Welsh accent if we enjoyed the meal, the sound man, in an effort not to offend, exclaimed rather unconvincingly that he enjoyed every bit of it. Later that evening, we drove to our allotted filming location and set up in a dark, remote corner of a Welsh forest, where in a couple of hours the rally cars would come thundering through. After setting up, we sat there killing time, talking about the meaning of life, the universe, and the rising price of our favorite alcoholic beverages. The sound man would normally wholeheartedly join in, finding such trivia irresistible. Well, he is a sound man after all. But tonight, things seemed ominously quiet from the sound department. All that could be heard from the darkness was the occasional whimper and a nervous cough as he tried to disguise the relentless escape of gases from his nether regions. As the rally cars started to hurtle through, he took up position with his beloved gun mic, but for some obscure reason, as we were filming, he began to perform a sort of strange little dance, a weird international hybrid of river dance and a Latin American salsa. His nimble footwork was sporadically interrupted by his body becoming totally rigid, which was accompanied by a stifled whimper through gritted teeth. I nervously surmised that something biological was going on. Maybe his liking for the recent gastronomic delights of the Far East was all too much for his delicate digestive system. With minutes to go before another car coming through, we were all poised for action. The sound man's dance routine continued to intensify until suddenly the revenge of the Vindaloo came to the fore. It became obvious to us onlookers that this poor guy's bowels could take no more. The pressure was simply too much to endure. After carefully positioning his gun mic in the optimum position for the best possible sound and setting the levels on his sound mixer, he swiftly disappeared behind a nearby bush to let Mother Nature have her wicked way. What followed was quite possibly the strangest sound I have ever heard, and indeed will probably ever hear in my life. It's not a sound I'd like to hear twice. I can only describe it as something akin to blowing bubbles through an extra-large McDonald's banana milkshake. Yes, the poor sound man was behind those bushes, giving it large. Now, one thing you need to know about the sound man is that he really is the quintessential Englishman. So there he was in mid flow when a rally car came powering around the corner and illuminated the poor man crouching there having something close to an out of body experience. Yes, 1 million candle power of quartz halogen spotlights directed straight at him in his most desperate of moments. Well, most of us would just accept that a man's got to do what a man's got to do, shrug it off, and let nature take its course. Oh no, that's just not cricket for an Englishman. Instead, in an effort to defend his pride and indeed the British Empire, he promptly pulled his trousers up over the relentless waves of diarrhea gushing from his bowels with the velocity of a speeding bullet. Well, after the cars had passed through, the sound man rather sheepishly returned to our camera position. Even in the half light, he looked pale and confused, like a man who had been abducted by extraterrestrials, had his buttocks probed and scrutinized, and then released, rejected on the grounds of not being an accurate representation of intelligent life on the planet Earth. As we began to de-rig, the stench of secondhand vindaloo became unbearable. But worse was to come. We had the unenviable task of driving back the unit to the hotel. The situation was so desperate that we unanimously decided to abandon his shirt and trousers in the Welsh countryside, but allow him to retain what dignity he had left by keeping his Union Jack underpants on, and that's not a joke. So after making him sit on a plastic carrier bag in the car, we set off. Even with all the windows open and an icy blast of air rushing through at 70 miles an hour, the stench was hard to believe. It was at this point I pondered the ancient art of pearl diving, where skilled swimmers are able to hold their breath for 10 minutes or more. I thought how useful that would be. I did try this technique for a short time, but eventually went dizzy and almost passed out with asphyxiation. Not helpful when you're driving. At 4:30 a.m., we arrived back at our hotel. The night porter took one look at the sound man and promptly refused him entry into the hotel. Despite trying to bribe the porter with a roll of 10-pound notes, we eventually concluded that he was a man of principle and that no amount of money would be enough to allow a middle-aged man wearing nothing but a puffer jacket and badly soiled Union Jack underpants into his hotel lobby. Finally, the camera assistant went back to his room, tied a towel and a clean pair of underpants to some string, and lowered them out of the window to the poor, shivering sound man. After a bit of a sort out in the car park, the porter reluctantly agreed to let him in so he could have a shower, get some sleep, and regain his self-respect. The end. That comes from Jordy I. Now, that was a story about production, and I can never get enough stories about production. But Jordy, what a fabulously well-written account of how eating the wrong food at lunch can go so very wrong when you're on a movie set. And by the way, I have stories perhaps not as illustrative as this one, but I feel you, sir, and I want to thank you for sharing because that story was outstanding. Well, anyway, folks, I'm going to bring this chat to an end because I have to go. Oh, wait, hang on a second. Stubble McShave gets one in on the end. He says the best movie president was Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln. Yeah, but he was portraying a real dude. I like presidents that are fictional. I like fictional presidents. I really do. I think they're great. But anyway, I'm going to end this chat. I'm going to see parachuters jump in, going to Redlands, California. I'm going to see parachuters jump in to the football stadium that I'm going to watch a band play, and we're going to see real fireworks in small town America. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank my moderators, Greg, Terry, Detective Jim, and the Honorable Mayor Bodden, who is not here today, I don't think. But if you like these chats, please hit like. If you want to send me letters, please go to the Burnettwork.net and support the channel there if you want. There's going to be lots coming. Tomorrow, I'm going to do my first Viewer's Choice show. That's going to be, it was suggested by you, a member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. But yes, please like these chats. Please subscribe if you don't already. The likes are very important for YouTube analytics. Thank you for that. And I want to thank you to Lucky Tiger, men's grooming products, for sponsoring these chats, because if you're a man and you want to look good and feel great, Lucky Tiger is your jam, son. So go to Lucky Tiger, getluckytiger.com. and punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity Community when you check out. So that's a good thing, right? And remember, everyone, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. With that, I bid you all, at least all Americans, a happy Independence Day. I will be back tomorrow. I will not be on the John Campea show because it's Friday. But I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thanks for being imagination connoisseurs. And thanks for being a part of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. It's great to have you. It's great to be a part of all of this community that we're building. And I think it's kind of the coolest geek community on the internet, if I do say so myself. And with that, I say, as always, have a better day.